Hi, this is Karen from the Huntley Library. Thanks for joining me for today's Teen Crafternoon. Today's project is going to be seed paper, so we're going to be making our own paper and then embedding seeds in it that you can later plant. So we're going to gather some supplies together and then I'll show you what to do. Here are the supplies that we're going to be using to make our seed paper. First of all, you're going to need some kind of paper. I'm using some old construction paper that I had because I think it's got a lot of texture and fibers in it already, so it should make an interesting seed paper. But you can use whatever you happen to have on hand. Printer paper is fine, for instance. You're going to need some kind of seeds to put in your paper mixture eventually. So I've got some mixed wildflowers here that hopefully the pollinators and I will enjoy having in my yard. So have some seeds ready too. We're going to need a screen of some kind, and I'm going to be trying these embroidery hoops, and I've got some organza fabric that I'm going to use as my screen. If you have like a window screen or that kind of screen material, you can use that too. You might want to put it in some kind of frame like I have with the embroidery hoop, just so you can set it up easily. And I've also got these cookie cutters that I'm going to use to make shapes for my paper. So I have a rabbit one, and I think this is a groundhog. So if you have some kind of cookie cutters or some kind of shapes that you want to use to make your seed paper shapes, you can do that. You can also make them freeform in whatever shape you happen to be able to create. Or if you were using a hoop like this, you could just make them circular. Seed papers are usually kind of smaller, so you won't have a whole sheet like the paper we have here. So having a fun shape is fun to have. And you'll also want to have a blender if you have one of those available to do crafts with. Be sure to ask permission before you just use the blender if it belongs to somebody else. Mine is pretty old, so I'm confident that if my paper destroys it, it's probably at the end of its lifespan anyway. So I'm going to be okay using mine. And you're going to need some water too to get your paper slurry ready. So gather your supplies together and we'll move on to the next step. So the first thing we're going to do is get our paper ready to be blended and create our paper slurry. So to do that, before we put anything in the blender, putting a big piece of paper like this in the blender isn't going to work super well. So we're going to want to tear this up a little bit. If you have a paper shredder, that will work great for that sort of thing, especially if it does like the cross-cut one, so you get real small pieces. I do not have a paper shredder, so I'm going to do this by hand, and my pieces will be a little bit bigger. And then depending on how many pieces of seed paper you want to make, you can adjust accordingly how much paper you tear up. I'm going to make this pretty small. Once we've got this torn up, we're going to soak it for a while in some water, about 30 minutes, so plan for some downtime. Or if, like me, you have several different colors, you can soak each of them separately and then layer them afterwards in your creations, or make different colored papers. There's other ways that you can add color to the paper too. You can add some acrylic paint when you're in the mixing process, or if you want to try like natural dyes, you can do that too. I know that red cabbage makes an excellent dye for things, so you can kind of experiment with that, or just use different colored paper like I'm using. So you can start tearing up some paper too, and we're almost ready to soak it. I have a couple other pieces that I tore up earlier, which are now in this bowl right here. I think I did a better job with the tearing this time. It's much smaller. So I'm going to add my new pieces to this slurry that we're creating. I think slurry is the technical name for the wet paper before or when you're putting it in the screen, on the screen to dry. Tear it a little bit more. And the soaking just makes it softer and easier for your blender or for you to tear up further if you don't have a blender. You can keep doing this by hand to get smaller pieces. This is very satisfying. If you're feeling frustrated or stressed out, this is probably a good activity to just kind of let your thoughts go. Very meditative. The art of tearing paper. Alright, and once you're satisfied with that, we're just going to let this sit, like I said, for about 30 minutes so it can really start to soften up, and then we'll stick it in the blender. Okay, we're ready to transfer the softened paper into the blender. So I'm going to do that by hand, but if you don't want to touch it anymore, you can use a spoon to transfer things over. Blorp. 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 You like my sound effects? Hopefully I can get all of that out of there. There's a few small pieces that might be hard to catch. I'm going to let some of this water go in there too. A little bit of water will help things blend more smoothly, although it will mean more water to drain out of your paper later on. Okay. Alright, and now we are ready to blend. I don't have my blender plugged in yet. I'm going to do that now and just make sure everything is off before I do that. I don't want anything shooting out. I'll put the top on first, so make sure you place the lid on your blender and then plug it in, and then let's try pureeing. Okay, you can't really see that, so let's see what it looks like now. I'm gonna unplug real quick. So you can already see that some of it is becoming a slurry. I still have quite a few big pieces in there too. And since we're just using a little blender, if you feel like it's not blending super well, you can take some of it out or just start with less and then blend it a little bit at a time if that's easier. I'm just going to move this around. Be careful because there's blades down there. You can use a spoon to readjust where your slurry is. Okay, and we will blend some more. So we're getting closer to it being a slurry. I still have some larger pieces, but you can see there's a lot of smaller ones that are more fibrous. That's the slurry we want. I added some more water because my paper was just getting stuck to the bottom. So we'll blend a little bit more and then check again. Okay, here we are. It looks like our paper is pretty slurried. It's kind of like slime right now. A little less slimy, but like the same kind of consistency. So I'm good with that consistency, and now we can start getting it on the screen and adding our seeds. Okay, I've got my screen set up over a pizza pan here, and my cookie cutter on top of that. And I've got some of my seeds here, and I'm just going to put these into a bowl so that they're easy for me to access, so I don't have to reach into this little pack it every time. So here's my wildflower seeds. This is the cutting mix. Nice for flowers and bringing into your house. So I'll just have that off to the side for a moment. And now it's time to get some of the slurry into my form here. So I think I'm going to try and use a spoon. Reach in my spoon and add the slurry inside of my cookie cutter. If you don't have a cookie cutter like this or a mold or anything, you can lay this out in any design or pattern that you want to. Or I've seen, if you have mason jars that have those lids, the two-part lids, you could use a jar lid to fill with your paper slurry, and then you'd have little circular like discs of paper. The idea of having the screen or this fabric behind it is so that some of this moisture will seep through and that you'll get a nice dry piece of paper eventually. You can kind of help things along by pressing down on it, either like I'm doing with the spoon, or later on, once it's got more of its shape, its form solidified, you could use a paper towel or a piece of newspaper or something like that, or another piece of paper to absorb more of that moisture. It is a good idea to have it completely dried. Or you could get moldy paper, or your seeds might start sprouting in it. That's always a possibility. Seed germination. Alright, it's going to be kind of tough for me to get up in these ears here. Or maybe not. Maybe the key is just doing what I did, is putting a whole bunch of slurry in there and then worrying about it later. Press, press, press with your spoon. Alright, and then that other ear is super skinny. Let me recommend easier shapes for your your cookie cutters if you've got access to something else. But it's amusing anyway, right? Okay. So you'll notice that we did not add the seeds to the blender, which is because we do not want to blend the seeds, which is what would happen if they got in there, most likely. We want them to be able to sprout at some point, so we're going to add them to the paper now as kind of a decoration too. So you can sprinkle them on, and you can use as many as you like, but remember that if they all germinate, they're going to be in very close proximity to one another, so you don't need to use all of them by any means. And if you're making a bunch of these, you'll want to reserve some seeds. You can also decorate with other things like leaves or flower petals, or people have used string, or I don't know that I'd use glitter for seed paper since you're going to plant it, but you can use other things. And then you can press these down with your finger to kind of embed them in the paper, or you can put on another layer of the slurry to really get them encased in it. It's kind of a cool texture. Like, it's not sticking to my fingers like I kind of expected it to, because it felt slimy, but it's sticking to itself. And I do want to leave, like I said before, the molder on it a little bit longer, just because it's still pretty wet, and I don't want the slurry to expand out. I would like it to keep the rabbit shape if possible. So I'm gonna keep it in the rabbit form for a little bit longer until it's drier. We can lift up and see how much moisture has been expressed already. There's quite a bit, actually. And I'll add a little bit more slurry on top. Just spread that out. That should keep all my seeds in there nicely. Cool. I'm not going to attack the ears again. I'll just use the spoon to press those seeds down. Alright, so once you're at this stage, now the next thing to do is just wait for this to dry. And like I said, you can help it along by pressing down on it with other things that will help express some of that water out of there, or absorb it. And I have quite a bit of slurry left in here, as you can see, so I can make a whole bunch more of these with other cookie cutters. Just for out of curiosity, let's see what our shape looks like when I take this off. Pretty good. I want to clean up the ears a little bit. They're a little bit thicker. I'm going to adjust my shape. Okay, and there's a bun. You could also put a fan on it too if you wanted to help it dry a little bit more. I thought I'd try a few groundhogs too to see how those turned out. And they don't take very much slurry, for one thing. That's probably more than I need. I'll take about half of that. And then I've been using the base or the bottom of the spoon to press that slurry into the form here, to the cookie cutter. And they really do hold their shape pretty well, so I guess you don't have to wait for it to dry very long to take the cookie cutter off and start on your next one. Although for the rabbit, I probably could have spaced that better because I put it right in the middle of the embroidery hoop, and so there was no room for anything else, except for a whole bunch of little groundhogs maybe around it, but not another rabbit. And I keep having to dry my hands off to add the seeds because if they're wet, then they just stick to me and not to the paper, or they won't go into the form here. Okay. And then just press them down a little bit and spread them out a little bit with the spoon again. Looking good. I'm excited about planting these right away, but you could use them for other things. You can give them away as gifts, or we had little seed papers that we gave out with bookmarks as library prizes too. So there we go. Looks good. Hope yours are coming out well. So you want to check on these guys in a few hours and see how they're doing. They are probably going to need, mine are pretty wet. They're probably going to need to dry at least overnight to get some of that water out. And I'm not going to do a whole lot more to express it now. So I'm just going to try and be patient. Patience is kind of the hardest part sometimes because we're doing a lot of hurry up and wait. But the rabbit is already, and it's probably only been maybe another 30 minutes. It's already getting pretty dry compared to the groundhogs, which are still awfully gooey. Here's some more of the water that came out of that. So, like I said, it'll probably be at least overnight until this is dry completely. Maybe longer. We'll see. I will definitely press on it more after it's dried longer and see if that helps speed things up. Anyway, I hope that yours are turning out great too, and that they dry speedily for you and you're able to plant them and get to see what some of these seeds look like once they sprout. I hope you had fun making seed paper today with me, and that it wasn't too messy a process for you. You're probably still waiting for your paper to dry. I know that I am, so I will have my examples at the library for you to see if you want to stop by the information desk and take a look at how it turned out for me. But I hope your seeds sprout, and I hope you get to experience the beauty of your seed paper. See you next time. For more great ideas, you can check out our website, www.huntleylibrary.org, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, or do both. See you next time. Bye.